Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to the Persistence Payoff Show. We're here on USA Global TV and Radio. I'm your host, Kimberly Schafer. This show is founded on the premise that persistence is one of the key factors that makes our dreams and visions come into reality. We all need it. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, but it must be done. So we talk with people about their journeys and learn from their path with persistence. I'm on my own learning journey. I'm a first-time inventor and entrepreneur. I invented the ring thing, which is a patented waterproof ring holder, and I'm learning about the importance of persistence every day. I'm really excited to talk with our guest today, Jennifer Shaw. She joins us again. She was on the show about a year ago, and I'm just delighted to hear about what's happened in the intervening year. Jennifer is a Canadian author of fantasy fiction. She's been an author since childhood, but it took her until she was an adult to really have the courage and belief in herself to publish her work. Since then, she has published a 4-book series called the Callum Walker series, which is a dark fantasy series of novels. And I'd love to hear what she has up her sleeve with the next one. She also, in 2019, faced some challenges. She was diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And I think that it's important to talk about the role that persistence played in her adjusting to those diagnoses, and also to see what the intersection is between living with both of those and being an author. So please help me welcome Jennifer Shaw.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to see you. I appreciate it.
I love to be here. I mean, who doesn't love to talk about their passion?
Yes, absolutely. And you are, I believe you're in Alberta, Canada right now. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
And has spring sprung for you yet?
Well, it did for a bit, and then Mother Nature decided, nah, just kidding. So now we've got some snow on the ground, and it's been freezing every night. So,
oh my gosh, you know, I'm based in San Diego, so I can never complain about our weather here. We're doing pretty good. So yes, you know, I would love to start by talking about your diagnoses in 2019, because I feel like that is something that's a bridge between both your personal life and your professional life. And I wonder if you can just talk with us about your diagnoses of autism and ADHD, and first, what led to being evaluated for those conditions?
yeah, so I was diagnosed following my son's diagnosis. He went through the ADOS assessment, which is fairly in depth, and we talked about a lot of like milestones and certain behaviors and such. And as we're going through, I was questioning, like, why are they labeling these as red flag behaviors? Because I've done those my whole life. And it got me thinking, it's like, I wonder, you know, because he's very much like me. So after he was diagnosed, I went through my own ADOS assessment, and I found out that I also have autism and ADHD. And then following that, within 6 months, my younger son was also diagnosed.
Wow, that's fascinating. So when you received the diagnoses, did that make some things click in your mind? Like, oh, now I know why this happened in my life, or I know now why I look at things a certain way.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. And, So I started to learn a little bit more about it, not just to help myself understand it, but also to help my sons because, as their mother, I have to help them through life as well. And I look back throughout the years and realize that there were a lot of things that I did that were very obvious on the spectrum, not realizing that I'm doing them, that made me stand out, like a lot of stimming behaviors. But I also saw things differently than other people. And I could understand concepts like, I was a big science and math geek, and they just clicked in my brain because, the answers were either right or they're wrong, and there's no gray areas. And I couldn't understand why other people couldn't see it the same way. I also gave myself permission to not understand everything, to ask questions. If I don't understand an idiom or a joke, or I don't even know if somebody's joking, I've given myself permission to ask. It's like, hey, I can't tell when somebody's joking or somebody's being sarcastic. Is that where you're coming from? And then, I've also made it public. Like I've shared it with all my friends and people that I meet that I struggle with autism, but I don't see it as a disability. It's just a different way that my brain works.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's really powerful. And I also was thinking what a gift in a way when you were talking about clarifying with people. Are you joking or do you actually mean that? Because I think so often we can be in conversation with someone and make assumptions, right? Oh, she said something sarcastic about me. And then you go down a whole road related to that. And maybe that wasn't the person's intention at all. So in a way, you are circumventing that by just going directly to the person and saying, hey, what are you meaning here? What is your intention with that?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like there were a lot of things growing up that I didn't understand because my brain is very literal. And I obviously can't get inside somebody else's head to see where they're coming from or what they're thinking. So I have to base all of my understanding on observation. So I became a very good people watcher. And I used to document conversations. They said this was the response. This must be what I need to say, because I didn't know how to talk to people. So I wrote myself a script literally, because for the longest time, I felt honestly like an alien dropped off on this planet without a script. So I made my own.
Wow, that is fascinating. And it's also I would imagine a real gift to your sons that you are all going through this together, because then from your own experience, how to guide them. And that will help them in their journey. Say, oh, look this is how mom deals with it. And then it normalizes things.
Yeah, and trying to explain it to my sons, I've really tried hard to say, you know what, it's not that there is anything wrong. It's our brain works different, and those things that would come naturally to other people, like playing with toys, learning how to talk to friends or make friends, learning how to talk to other kids, those are things that we actively have to learn. But it doesn't mean that we can't learn them. They don't come naturally. We have to make efforts. And I'm, also giving them some examples of this is how I learned. I was very creative. So I did my own self-therapy because I didn't recognize it when I was a kid. And for example, I also have dyslexia. That was a recent diagnosis within the past year. And I do remember as a child that I had strategies to help me. So like, for example, with reading, I get to the end of the line and I get lost coming back to the next line. So I started using a bookmark. Nowadays they do have tools for it, but back then it wasn't recognized as much. They didn't have tools unless it was severe. They didn't really give it much attention. So I'd take my bookmark and I'd slide it down to the next line, and I'd slide it down again when I got to that one. And I had a teacher that came along and she took my bookmark away and she said, "That is not how we read." And so I had to come up with a different strategy. I'm like, well, I'm going to use my finger because you can't take that away.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can't believe she did that.
It was just a lack of understanding, I think, at that age or at that time.
Yes. So you have been writing since childhood, and do you feel, and fantasy fiction, and so do you feel, you mentioned that you wrote scripts for yourself, and so do you feel that part of your journey with writing came out of your autism and ADHD, and like you were saying, like a mechanism to sort of create your world within that?
Absolutely. It was a means for me to understand. So, I started as a people watcher trying to figure out how everybody works, trying to figure out like, how are they getting through life without struggles? Or maybe they're having struggles, but they're hiding it really well. But then, there's only so much you can see by observing without understanding where people are thinking. So I started trying to read. And that was a way to get into quote unquote people's heads, but they're not real people, they're fictional people, but to get into a fictional character's head and try to figure out, okay, this is why they're behaving that way, is because they're thinking. But then it didn't help me to understand myself. So I started to create my own stories. That's where it started, so that I could be in that head and I could be guiding the action based on what I was experiencing. So if I was having a lot of issues with confidence, I would place my characters in situations where they had problems with confidence and live vicariously through them. How did they deal with it? It was one thing that gave me control over my life.
Yes, I can absolutely see how that would be. And I'm curious to know, with the Callum Walker series, are those characters that had their genesis in your childhood, or are those characters that came along later in your writing career?
I think they're characters that solidified because I mean, when you start out, I started out writing, I was not very good at it. I mean, I was, a preteen. I was just writing adventures, writing action, writing emotions. But as I grew in both practice, experience, understanding, and my issues and troubles of the time became bigger. So the characters that I've written in my Callum Walker series are not the same characters that I would have written, say, 30 years ago. So, they kind of formed out of this evolution of my writing.
Yes. And do you tuck into it a character that's based on you?
Not not wholly based on me, but it's really like, in order to connect with my characters, they have to have some aspects of me. So some characters have one aspect, another character will have a different aspect. So they're bits and pieces of me.
Yes, that makes sense. And I'm curious to know also, you in your bio, you talk about not having the confidence to put forward your writing. And so what led you to get that confidence and submit your first articles or manuscripts for publication?
It was actually my diagnosis that gave me the courage. Once I started to learn more about autism and ADHD, I started to kind of think, well, maybe writing was my special interest, and I had never shared anything. So after my diagnosis, I thought, maybe this is a sign, kind of, maybe this is my special interest. I'm going to get brave. I had just finished my first manuscript in my current series, and I sent it off to an editor, just keeping in mind that the worst they can say is it sucks. My editor came back and said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did. And now I have 4 published. I'm working on a 5th.
Wow. So wait a minute. So you're saying that you were diagnosed in 2019, and it was after that you started the 4-book series. I was imagining that you had published your first book in 2013, and this had been a long journey, but that's incredible to do that in a short period of time. Kudos to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so with the 5th book, one question I have about series is, how do you know when to end it? Is this ending, or is this do you see it as perhaps a 10-book series?
So I know where my series is going to end. When I started writing, I wasn't very much of a plotter. I always knew where to start, where to end, and what in the middle, somewhere in the middle needed to shift, what action needed to shift it in the middle, but I just let everything else fill itself in. Same thing with my series. I knew where to start, where to end, and somewhere in the middle. And I know I've crossed that midpoint. So I can see that I'm heading downhill towards the end of my series, but I'm just not sure exactly how many books it's going to take me to get there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. You can just see where the journey takes you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have other books that you're working on at the same time?
Yes, I am. I've got a side project that I haven't been able to spend as much time on this one, as I'm working on my 5th Callum Walker book. But it's sort of a dystopian Robin Hood meets Romeo and Juliet with hints of Hunger Games. And then obviously there's times of inspiration that hit me, and I will write down an idea and kind of sort of formulate it, but not solidify it.
Yes. Oh, I can imagine. And also, how do you decide whether to write a long form book or a short, just a short article, or a short, I don't know what you would call, like maybe a submission that's 4 pages long?
I I'm cursed to write long books. I put so much into them that I struggle to keep it short because there's so much that I want to put into my book. So I'm on the other end where my books tend to be longer and they have to get cut down in editing. But I don't really set a word count or a length. I just write until I finish telling my story.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. And when you look back at some of your earlier works, like pre-2019, are there any of those that you would consider publishing?
Absolutely. I mean, they'd need a lot of work because, my writing, I've been working more in the last few years to better my wordsmithing skills and learn a lot more of the mechanics because English wasn't my forte. It was storytelling. As we know, writers and storytellers are two different beasts. So
Yeah.
it's right. You can learn to write, but not everybody can, become a storyteller. It's not really something you can instinctively learn. When I look back on my previous writing, especially the oldest writing that I've done, it's very cringy, some of the words, because I was just learning to write. But the ideas are what I would run with.
Interesting. So do you go and do public storytelling as well as your writing?
Not yet, but I do like to encourage young writers to reach out to authors that were not scary. A lot of us are, happy to help out, or at least tell young writers is like, okay, I can't tell you everything, but this is what I did.
Mm, mm. What a great mentorship. That's a great mentorship opportunity. Yeah. And do you see the writing bug in any of your children?
I've seen it kind of starting. Like my youngest wrote his own little comic in a notebook called Hudson's Tales, and he's really interested in graphic novels right now, and that's reflective of what he's writing. And my older one is less about writing, more about reading, and he's really big into fantasy and dragons. So I'm hoping that it's a little my books are he's read them, but only the action parts. So I'm hoping as he gets older that he'll enjoy my books a bit more.
Yes. And do you ever get tempted to write in a different genre?
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing I haven't written in, and it's not because there's anything wrong with it, it just doesn't appeal to me, is I don't write history, just I fall asleep. I don't write mystery unless it's got a lot of action and stuff, and maybe, but I can't. I have a hard time figuring out whodunits or making it less obvious. And I write elements of romance into all my books because I think that's an aspect of our lives that would be, it wouldn't be complete without aspects of romance. But I don't write spicy romance. I don't write bedroom scenes unless there's a sword fight in the bedroom. Nothing, we're not doing anything intimate there.
Yes. Well, I sometimes I listen to books on tape a lot when I'm doing other things, and I've sort of stopped listening to the romance genre because it all becomes the same. Even those bits are just there's like nothing new is under the sun, and so it's not that.
And
that
I mean, my personal belief is it's hard to imagine that somebody has 3 chapters worth of stamina.
Yes, that's right. I agree. I love that. Yes. Yes. And how do you find the writing community? Are there Canadian writing groups and other North American writing groups, or do you find that writers, is it more of an international, does it vary by country at all? As far as like writing groups and.
I think there's writing groups everywhere, but being that we're a lot of writers are introverted, we tend to hide in coffee shops and such with our tablet, with our computers, a notebook or a cup of coffee and stuff. We don't tend to, we'd rather live in our stories than going out there. I have joined a few writers groups because if you look hard enough you'll find them. And it's amazing to read, to meet other authors and be inspired and be able to inspire them because it's a community. I've never thought of, if I met another author, and I have, who writes in the same genre as me, it's not a competition because we all write differently. It doesn't matter if we're writing the same thing.
Yeah, that makes sense because it is so personal. And are you able to spot when someone is using AI for their writing?
Yeah, the plots, and I mean, there's certain familiar ways that AI likes to write,
Mm.
and it's easier to spot, I think, in short, or like the sentence structures is easier to spot in short segments, but
Mhm.
the plots do not make sense. If I've seen things that I'm like, wow, that's all over the place, and it's like somebody asked if I get inspiration from my dreams, and I say no because the plots don't make sense. Same thing with AI.
That is a fantastic analogy. I really like that. That's a great analogy. That makes a lot of sense. I'd love to talk about the role of persistence, both through your own personal journey with your diagnoses and those of your sons and your writing. Do you find that, first of all, do you feel that that quality of persistence is the same in both of those areas, or do you think your persistence looks different in your writing career as it does in your personal journey?
So for me, there's either persistence or there's giving up.
Mm,
And I've come so far in my writing career that I don't want to give up. So I keep persisting. As far as life, I'm a mom and I've got people depending on me. So persistence is a necessity. I'm not persisting so much for myself as I am for my kids. But I keep thinking, I mean, there's moments where you just want to throw your hands up and just say, oh, this isn't working, or why am I doing this? But, then it's time to refresh with, instead of looking at the things you haven't done, start looking at the things you have accomplished. And a
mm.
lot of times that's a lot of reflecting on where you've been and where you are now.
It's such a good point because it is very easy to get on ourselves because we all have such long lists and say, oh my gosh, I didn't do these 15 things. And then you look at the list
Yes.
and say, yeah, but I got the 8 important ones done. And
Yeah, exactly.
you're totally right about that. Do you
And
find,
we can, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, we tend to beat ourselves up, and our voices in our heads speak louder than anybody else's. So it's best not to listen so much to our own critique and start looking at what other people are, asking other people, like, am I being productive? Am I, is this worth, start, you can take your advice, but I wouldn't listen to it 100%.
Yeah, I totally agree. Someone put it much better than what I'm about to say, but it's basically like the narration voices that we all have in our heads are not correct. Those are not
Yes.
accurate. They're not the deciders. And so,
Yeah.
it's complicated.
Hmm.
Do you find that with the diagnosis of ADHD and being a writer, so I imagine that when you're writing, you need to sit for long periods of time and focus and really plow through. Does does the ADHD interrupt that, or how do those two things work together or not?
Because writing is my special interest, it's also my hyper focus.
Mhm.
And so it's something that I will forget the world is existing. I will sit down at 8 a.m. in the morning and unless I'm interrupted or the house falls down around me, I will forget to move. I will forget to eat. I will get up like hours and hours later, realizing it's like, oh man, it's dark outside and my legs are sore. I've been sitting for 12 hours and all I've been doing is writing because it's it's kind of like hobby turned passion turned obsession.
Mm.
And I'm okay with that because I feel that it's also my therapy.
Yes. Yes, and it's working. You're successful at it. It's not something that's a negative in your life. It's a very positive endeavor, and you're helping other people both be inspired by your stories and also your own journey. So,
Mhm.
yeah, when you have a series of books, so now you're working on the 5th book, do you ever look back at the first book and think, oh man, I wish I had done something different in that? Or are you able to just let them go once they're published? It's out of mind.
Well, oddly enough, when I got to my 4th book, I switched editors and they did such an amazing job. I
Mm,
wanted them to go back to re-edit the first book. And if I'm going to do that, I may as well get a new cover. And if I'm going to do that, I may as well add new material. So a couple months ago, I relaunched my first book in my series with new chapters, new materials, and a new cover. And I'm also going through and just doing, not adding new material, but just doing a re-edit because
mm,
having been diagnosed with dyslexia, and switching editors, I also wanted to I've changed as a writer. So I also want to kind of make sure all my books are looked at by the same editor, so they all kind of coincide, and give them fancy covers too. Because, who doesn't want a nice new cover?
Absolutely. And that's really a good point, that you want it to be cohesive and not to have someone say, wait a minute, here after book 4, something really changed, and how the tone or how that sounds. What is the process for finding an editor? How do you find someone who you feel gets you and understands what it is that you're conveying?
So first of all, I started out with word of mouth, local authors telling me, hey, we use this editor, in the beginning, and I didn't know any better. So I thought all editors were the same, but they're not. And just because you pay more for an editor doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be a good editor. I've had editors that, quoted like upwards of 10,000 for a book. And I've had other people that said, hey, I'll do it for 500, so it's a big range. So after going through a few recommended, like word of mouth, I found a guild of editors through the Alexandra Writing Society conference. There's a conference called When Words Collide here in Alberta every year. And I found an editor that was affiliated with a guild of editors. And you've also got to look at whether or not they're good for fiction versus nonfiction, because there is a difference there. It's best to find somebody who maybe is in your specific genre so that they know what to expect. Ultimately, I'm with an editor now who was, again, recommended to me, who is also a member. So it's like both of those, also a member of a guild. Yeah.
Yes, that's so interesting, because I hadn't really thought about it until we're talking about it now, about how important that is to have someone who understands your wishes and your tone. And
yeah, exactly.
Are you tempted to write nonfiction and write your own story and share about your life?
It just like history, I would be so bored. My life's not that exciting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is on a day-to-day basis, but I think the fact that you have dealt with all of these things and overcome, and you're dealing and thriving with what you've been given in life. I mean, I think that's a fantastic story. I think you would inspire people.
I know people have asked me if I'm ever going to write or if I've written an autistic character. But you know what? I don't really know what makes me autistic. I mean, once I was diagnosed, it was very shortly after I was diagnosed, I approached somebody one of my friends, and I told them, I said, I've just been diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And they asked me, so, oh, what's it like to be autistic? And I said, I don't know. What's it like to not? If you can tell me what it's like to not be, then I can tell you what it is. So I really don't know how to write an autistic character. The fact that I put myself into all my little bits of myself into my characters, maybe I'm writing in a roundabout way an autistic character. I don't know.
Yeah. It's such an interesting, I'm smiling because I know that I'm 6'1", and I've been that tall since I was 14. And for me, it's perfectly normal. And it's only when I see myself in a window walking down the street and see my reflection and go, oh, I'm a lot taller than everybody else. But it's just, as you're saying, like, it's what you know, it's normal.
Yeah.
There's nothing normal. It's just the way life is. So yeah, that is interesting. I'd love to know how you keep track of your characters. Like, I'm sort of envisioning like a whiteboard full of Post-it notes with names of characters. Or how do you track everything when you're writing a book?
So I know my characters inside out, backwards. I know their history, I know their motivations, and they all live rent-free in my head. Unfortunately, I mean, it's getting crowded in there, so I should actually write them all down. But I mean, if it comes to where I need details, like how old is this specific person, I can go back into my books and look it up. But I know their essence.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I'm fascinated by your process of the series. And you mentioned that, you're on the 5th book and you can kind of feel you're on the downhill slide in terms of the second half of the series. Is it when you finish this book and go on to the sixth book, will the sixth book just depend on how you wrapped up the fifth book, or do you have an idea of, okay, I'm working on the fifth book, and in the sixth book, I want to set it up now so that this can happen in the next book?
The setting up things kind of happens naturally, and I don't even think about it. And I'll get to the fifth book, for example, and I'll be writing something and I'll be like, hey, I set that up nicely in the first book without even noticing, because it's not an effort. And I think if it's effortless, it feels more natural. I've already plotted for my sixth and my seventh book, so I know what's going to happen in each. It's a matter of knowing the big events and the mood, because every story has a specific feel to it. So all I need to do is hold on to that, and all the little details and little events will kind of sort themselves out.
Yes. It sounds like such a healthy and joyful process, because you're not putting a lot of structure on yourself to say, this must happen now to this person. You're just having those ideas, but letting it flow. And I think you're right that I think as a reader, you can feel when that has happened with the author. When you're reading books yourself, do you read in the same genre that you write in, or are you a fan of other genres?
Like same thing with reading. I'm a fan of pretty much everything except history, mystery. Again, if it has enough action, I'm okay with that. And I don't read spicy romance. So, I mean, there's some books where there's enough plot and action going on. There's enough of a story to entice me that I'm okay with fast forwarding through some chapters, but it's just not, if it's strictly spicy romance, that's not an interest to me.
Yeah. I would agree. I never thought that I would have said that I agree with you, but I've come to agree with you very much on that in the last year. It's just not that unique or interesting. So, and when you are working on a cover or having a cover design, you said you just redesigned some of the covers for your earlier books. How do you work with the artist? You tell them, here's how I visualize this character, and you iterate with them, or how are the covers designed?
So initially, my first covers for my books, I went with somebody through Fiverr, and I told them, I said, I have this idea, and they put it together as best we could, and then we're just like, no, I need this to be darker, I need this different shade, I need the character in the front to be bigger or whatever. The cover designer that I'm working with now, who has, she's an award-winning designer, she gives me concepts. She does ask me, it's like, do you have any ideas for this? And I was like, green, foresty, because we're working on our second cover, so green and foresty. So she looks over my book. She looks at my synopsis. She asks me questions, and then she comes up with concepts. And then I choose the concepts, and then she gives me mock-ups, images. And then I choose the mock-ups, which ones do I like best? Which ones do I don't? What elements do I like? And then, so it's kind of almost like she's trying to read my mind. Which is kind of, it's cool, but also crazy at the same time. And then she comes back with something, and I'm like, wow, that's better than I imagined. So I am very happy with the way my covers are turning out. So my first cover has been redone. My fourth cover has been redone because we started out of order. And we are just finalizing my second cover, and then she's going to work on my third soon.
Wow, that is so neat. I think that we have your website available, and maybe we can put that up and show your books, because the covers are quite eye-catching.
Yes.
That may be coming up here shortly. So while we're waiting for the website, I would love to ask you in our last couple of minutes, what advice would you give to someone who is perhaps a writer who feels the same way as you, that they don't have the confidence to put forward? Well, first, let's take a look at your book covers, because I think these are really great. So this is your website. I'll let you talk us through this.
Yeah, so there are my books in order. So The Ascension is the first. There's my fancy new cover. And then the Convergence is second. Oh, it disappeared. They're all listed in order. If you go to my website, you can see there's a books tab in the top right corner that you can see them all in order, and you can click on each, and you can read the write-up that tells you a little bit more about it. And there's links to them online as well.
Okay. Super. All right. Thank you. And I just love the color scheme that we saw up there. And
Yeah.
so just as my final question is, if you were to talk with an author who maybe feels the same way that you felt, of just not having the courage to put forward their work for consideration for publication, what advice would you give that person?
So I had stories that I've written hundreds of stories and I never shared them. And until I shared them, I didn't know that, how they would be received. And I mean, the worst thing that somebody can say is, I don't like this. And if they don't, then write for yourself. I mean, ultimately write for yourself anyway. But if that's the worst that can happen, it's not that big of a stretch to send something out there to the world or to an editor or let readers decide if they like it. You don't know if it's good. It's, like we are our own worst critics. And it's also when you do become published, or if you have become published and you're not seeing much in the beginning, it's like any business you start, you work, and then you start to see some, fruit of your labor. Basically, it's a marathon, not a race.
That is fantastic advice. That's great, inspiring advice. So thank you for that. And this time has flown by, so we're at the end of our time, but I do want to ask you to please tell people how they can connect with you. How can they find your work? How can they buy your books? And if they want to reach you directly, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can, best place to start is my website, jmshawauthor.com. Like, again, I was saying you can see all my books, you can read, what they're kind of about, and there's links to find them online. They're available as a print on Amazon, they're on Kindle. First couple are on Kobo, the best will be eventually, and same thing with Barnes & Noble. There's links to that as well. On the bottom of my website is my social media, so you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, or you can check out reviews of my books on Goodreads.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your journey and your story, and I hope that you come back, especially when the fifth book is getting ready to publish. So please come back and talk some more with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. So I end every show with a quote about persistence. And I think that this quote fits very well with our conversation today. This is from Calvin Coolidge, who said, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence." And I think that's true whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional lives. I would love to connect. If you would like to reach me, you can find me on my website. It's ringthing.com. And my email is kimberly@ringthing.com. And my Instagram is @ring_thing_. I would love to hear from you with any comments about the episodes, suggestions for guests, or any thoughts that you have that you would like to share. We're here every other Tuesday at 12 o'clock Pacific time. You can watch us live or watch afterwards on YouTube. And I'd also like to thank our producer, Roland Friedel, and our executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kervick. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
My Tummy Hurts by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Meet Jackie. She loves recess, running with friends, and laughing on the playground. At school, Jackie tries to play like she always does, but suddenly the pain comes back. Lately, something feels different and her tummy hurts, sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. With the help of a caring teacher, a nurse, her mom, and a kind doctor, Jackie begins to understand what her body is trying to tell her. Sometimes tummy pain is more than a simple bellyache. Some children live with conditions like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. Jackie listens to her body. She asks for help. She knows she's not alone. And Jackie finds her way back to running, laughing, and being herself. My Tummy Hurts, a kid's guide to bellyaches and bathroom troubles by Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, available on Amazon and in fine bookstores around the world.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.